The last time I saw Grayson Calloway, he was standing outside my prom, telling me it had all been a bet. That the late-night phone calls, the jacket he gave me when I was cold, the way he used to look at me like I was the only person in the room, all of it, had been a dare from the football team. Get the quiet girl to fall for you. See how far she'll go. I was 17. I believed him. I spent 10 years building a life where nobody could ever do that to me again. I got the degree. I got the corner cubicle, then the office, then the title. I learned how to walk into a room like I owned it, how to smile with my eyes and mean absolutely nothing by it, how to never, ever let anyone see the part of me that still flinched at the smell of cheap prom cologne. And then, on a Tuesday morning that started like every other Tuesday morning, I walked into the executive boardroom for the biggest meeting of my career, sat down in my assigned seat, looked up to greet the new CEO, and it was him, 10 years older, broader shoulders, a jaw that could cut glass, a suit that cost more than my first car, but the eyes were exactly the same. The eyes that used to look at 17-year-old me like I was something worth staying up until 2 a.m., talking to. He froze mid-sentence. I froze with my coffee halfway to my mouth, and in that single silent second, I understood something that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. The boy who broke my heart in high school wasn't just back in my life. He was my boss. Before I tell you how this story ends, I need you to stay with me, because what happens at the company gala, about 40 minutes from now, is the reason I almost didn't get my happy ending at all. There's a woman in this story who wanted to make sure of that. Her name is Brianna Sinclair, and by the end of this video, you're going to hate her almost as much as I did. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. My name is Everly Bennett, and up until that Tuesday, I would have told you I had my life completely figured out. I was 27, a senior marketing strategist at Callaway Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing brand consultancies in the country, and I was good at my job. Not good for a woman my age, good. Good, period. I'd clawed my way up from an unpaid internship to a title with my name on the door in 5 years flat, and I did it without a single favor from anybody. My best friend Camille, who sat 2 desks down from me and knew literally everything about my life except the things I never talked about, used to tease me relentlessly about my dating history, or lack of one. "You haven't had a real boyfriend since I've known you," she said one morning, stirring oat milk into her coffee like it was a science experiment. "Not one. 5 years. What happened to you?" "Nothing happened to me," I told her. "I just have standards." "You have a wall," she said. "There's a difference. Somebody built that wall, Everly. I want to meet him so I can key his car." I laughed it off, like I always did, because the truth was so much smaller and so much bigger than a wall. The truth had a name. I met Grayson Calloway the fall of 11th grade. He'd just transferred to our school, a scholarship kid, quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from learning early that nobody's really listening. He wore the same 3 shirts on rotation and sat in the back of every classroom like he was trying to disappear. Everyone else looked past him. I didn't. Maybe it was because I knew what it felt like to be looked past, too. Whatever it was, I sat down next to him in AP Literature on a random Tuesday. Funny how Tuesdays keep showing up in this story. And I made him laugh so hard he choked on his water. After that, we were inseparable. Not the kind of inseparable people gossip about, at least not at first. We talked on the phone until 2 a.m., about nothing and everything. He walked me home even though it was 3 blocks out of his way. Once, in October, I forgot my jacket, and he gave me his without even being asked, and I wore it home like it was something precious. I fell in love with him slowly, the way you fall asleep, not noticing it happening until you're all the way under. By spring, everyone knew. My friends teased me. His friends, the few he had, went quiet whenever I brought him up, which I chalked up to boys being weird about feelings. I should have paid closer attention to that silence. Prom night, I put on a dress I'd saved 3 months of babysitting money for. Pale blue, the color he once told me matched my eyes. I I remember standing outside the venue, waiting for him, my heart going so fast I could feel it in my throat. He showed up late, and he wasn't smiling. There was a girl standing a few feet behind him. I didn't know her name then. I know it now, and you will too. And the way she was looking at him told me everything before he even opened his mouth. "Everly," he said, and his voice was flat in a way I'd never heard from him. "I need to tell you something." I remember every word of what came next, like it was carved into me. This, us, it was never real. It started as a bet. The guys wanted to see if I could get you to fall for me. I'm sorry. I should have ended it sooner. I didn't cry in front of him. I want that on the record. I smiled, said something I don't even remember, turned around in my pale blue dress, and walked the 3 blocks home alone. The same 3 blocks he used to walk me down every single day, and I didn't look back once. I never spoke to Grayson Calloway again, until that Tuesday, 10 years later, when he looked up from the head of a boardroom table and said my name, like it still meant something to him. Everly. I'd love to tell you I handled it with grace. I did not. "Mr. Calloway," I said, in the coldest, most professional voice I could summon, and I watched something flicker across his face. Surprise? Maybe hurt? I genuinely could not tell, and I did not care to find out. The meeting went on. Somehow, I don't remember a single word of the presentation I gave that day. I remember the way his eyes kept finding mine across the table, and the way I kept refusing to let them stay there. He tried to catch me afterward, in the hallway, hand half raised like he wanted to stop me. "Everly, wait! Can we talk?" "About what?" I said, not slowing down. "The quarterly report?" "Because that's the only thing I have to say to you. That's not what I meant, and you know it." I finally stopped and turned to face him, and for one dangerous second, I let myself really look at him, really look, for the first time in 10 years, and my chest did something I refused to acknowledge. "There is nothing," I said quietly, "that you and I need to talk about. That conversation happened outside a prom a decade ago. I got the message loud and clear." I walked away and did not let myself shake until I was safely inside the elevator. That should have been the end of it. It was not. 2 days later, an email hit my inbox with a subject line that made my stomach flip. "New campaign leadership. Bennett, Calloway." He'd requested me, specifically, by name, for the biggest product launch of the year, the kind of campaign that makes careers. I marched into his office ready to refuse it on principle, and found him standing at the window with his sleeves rolled up, looking like he hadn't slept. "You can't be serious," I said, not bothering to knock. He turned. "You're the best strategist in this building. It's not personal, it's business. Everything about this is personal, and you know it." "Then prove me wrong," he said, low and even. "Take the campaign. Beat me at my own game if you have to. But don't turn down the biggest opportunity of your career because of something that happened when we were 17. I hated that he was right. I hated it more that some small, stupid 17-year-old part of me was flattered he'd asked for me at all. I took the campaign. It was, in hindsight, the worst and best decision of my life. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in forced proximity and barely contained tension. Late nights in the office, just the 2 of us, and a whiteboard covered in half-erased ideas. Coffee runs where he somehow, infuriatingly, still remembered I liked my order with oat milk and 1 pump of vanilla, not 2. There was a moment, small, stupid, and I've replayed it 100 times since, where he leaned over my shoulder to fix a slide, and his hand brushed mine on the trackpad, and neither of us moved for 3 full seconds before I yanked my hand back like I'd touched fire. "Sorry," he said, and he didn't sound sorry at all. "It's fine," I said, and my voice came out wrong, too soft, and I hated myself for it. That was around the time Brianna Sinclair started paying attention to me. I want to be very clear about something. Brianna wasn't just some random coworker with a grudge. Brianna was Grayson's ex-fiancée, VP of Operations, the kind of beautiful that photographs perfectly and feels like frostbite up close. Everyone in that building assumed she and Grayson would eventually get back together. the golden power couple, the wedding half the executive floor had apparently already mentally attended. She started small. My name mysteriously left off email threads I should have been copied on. Credit for a campaign concept I'd pitched somehow migrating to someone else's mouth in a leadership meeting. Nothing I could point to directly. Nothing that wouldn't make me sound paranoid if I said it out loud. But I felt her watching me. Every time Grayson so much as looked in my direction a beat too long, I'd catch Brianna's eyes on us, calculating. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to find out that Brianna Sinclair had a history with me that went back a lot further than that office. One night, working late, just us, the city lights outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, a half-eaten takeout container between us, Grayson finally said the thing he'd clearly been trying to say for 2 weeks. Can I tell you what actually happened? Prom night. All of it. Grayson, please. His voice cracked, just slightly, in a way that undid something in my chest against my will. 10 years, Everly. Just give me 2 minutes. I should have walked out. I didn't. 2 minutes, I said. He never got them, because that's exactly when the door opened, and Brianna walked in without knocking, holding 2 files she absolutely did not need to deliver at 10 o'clock at night, smiling at me like a knife wrapped in silk. Am I interrupting something? She said. No, I said, standing up so fast my chair nearly toppled. I was just leaving. I caught Grayson's eyes on my way out. He looked like a man who'd just watched something slip through his fingers. I didn't know yet that the thing slipping through his fingers wasn't the conversation. It was the truth about what really happened the night Brianna Sinclair first destroyed my life, a truth I wouldn't hear the whole of for 2 more weeks. It took a crisis to crack me open. 3 weeks into the campaign, our biggest client threatened to walk over a leaked internal deck, half-finished concepts that made it out looking like we didn't know what we were doing. It was a disaster, the kind that ends careers, and for about 6 hours, I genuinely thought mine was over. Grayson didn't blink. He walked into that client meeting, stood beside me, not in front of me, beside me, and when the client's lawyer tried to imply the failure was mine alone, Grayson cut in without raising his voice. Everly Bennett built this campaign from nothing into the best work this company has produced in 3 years. If there's a problem with leadership, it's mine, not hers. Nobody had defended me like that in 10 years. I don't think anybody ever had. We saved the account. Barely. And that night, standing in the parking garage under flickering fluorescent lights, both of us running on caffeine and adrenaline, something in me finally cracked open. Thank you, I said, for today. You don't have to thank me for telling the truth. Grayson. His name felt strange and familiar in my mouth, like a language I hadn't spoken in years. Tell me what happened. Prom night, I want to hear it. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was afraid if he spoke too fast I'd change my mind. Brianna and I grew up 2 streets apart, he said. Our families were close, the kind of close where our parents already assumed we'd end up together. I never wanted that, but I was 17 and broke and scared, and my mom was sick, and Brianna's family had already quietly paid 2 of my medical bills without telling me. So when Brianna found out about you, about us, she gave me an ultimatum. Break it off with you publicly, humiliate you enough that you'd never speak to me again, or she'd make sure my mother lost her insurance coverage through her father's company. I felt the ground tilt under me. I know how it sounds, he said quietly. I was a coward. I should have found another way. I should have told you the truth and let you hate me for the real reason, instead of a lie. Instead, I let you believe the worst thing about yourself for 10 years so I could protect my mom. I've regretted it every single day since. I didn't say anything for a long time. The parking garage was silent except for the hum of the lights. I believed I wasn't worth staying for, I finally whispered. For 10 years, Grayson, I built my entire life around not being that girl again. You were always worth staying for, he said, stepping closer. I was the one who wasn't brave enough. I should have walked away. I wanted to, but my feet didn't move, and neither did his, and for one suspended, breathless second, I thought he might kiss me right there under the fluorescent lights, and some traitorous part of me wanted him to. A car alarm went off 2 rows over. We both jumped back like we'd been caught doing something illegal. "I should go," I said. "Everly. Good night, Grayson." I drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel the entire way, furious at myself for how badly I wanted to turn around. 2 days later, Camille called me practically shrieking into the phone. "You need to come to my apartment right now." I found something. She'd borrowed a box of my old books months ago for a reading challenge, and, digging through them, found something tucked inside my old copy of The Great Gatsby, the one I'd lent Grayson in 11th grade and never gotten back. A letter, yellowed at the edges, folded into careful eighths, clearly written and rewritten a dozen times based on the crossed-out lines. "Everly, I know you probably never want to hear from me again, and you have every right to hate me. What I said outside the prom was a lie I told to protect someone else, and it cost me the only real thing I've ever had. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know, somewhere, even if you never read this, none of it was fake. Not 1 second. G, dated 3 weeks after prom, never sent." I sat on Camille's floor and cried for the first time in 10 years. Not for the boy who broke my heart, but for the girl who spent a decade believing she wasn't enough to be told the truth. "I let myself fall for him again," I told Camille that night, wiping my face. "I think I never actually stopped." "Oh, honey," she said, hugging me. "I know." The company gala was 3 weeks later. The same gala I told you at the beginning of this video to remember. I wore a deep emerald gown that night, the kind of dress that makes you stand differently the second you put it on. Camille did my hair. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time before I left, wondering if I was about to make the same mistake twice, or finally correct the one I'd made 10 years ago by walking away. I saw him the moment I walked in. He saw me too, and I watched every other conversation in that ballroom become background noise to him. He crossed the room like the crowd didn't exist. "You look," he started, and then stopped, like the right word had escaped him completely. "You can just say beautiful," I said. "I'll allow it, this once." "Beautiful doesn't cover it," he said, and I felt that all the way down to my shoes. We ended up on the balcony sometime after midnight, the party a low hum behind us, the city glittering below. "I read the letter," I said quietly. He went very still. "Camille told me she was going to give it back to you. I didn't think you'd actually—" "I read it twice," I said. "I know why you didn't send it, and I know why you said what you said that night. I'm not saying it didn't cost me 10 years. It did, but I don't think I ever really stopped being 17 and in love with you, Grayson, no matter how hard I tried to convince myself otherwise." His hand came up slowly, giving me every chance to step back. I didn't. "Everly, just kiss me before I change my mind," I whispered. He did. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was slow and careful, and it felt like 10 years finally exhaling all at once. Somewhere behind us, fireworks that had nothing to do with us went off over the water, and for one perfect, unguarded moment, I let myself believe we were actually going to be okay. I didn't see Brianna watching us from the ballroom doors. I wish I had. The weeks that followed were the happiest I'd let myself be in a decade. We kept it quiet at work, professional in meetings, careful in hallways, but it was there in every glance, every accidental brush of hands over the conference table, every late-night text that had nothing to do with the campaign. Camille caught me smiling at my phone one Tuesday and nearly dropped her coffee. "Oh my God, you're glowing. I haven't seen you glow since—" "Actually, I've never seen you glow. Who is he?" "I'm not telling you," I said, still smiling. "It's the CEO, isn't it?" "Camille, it's the CEO." I made her swear on her life not to say a word. She kept that promise for exactly 4 days, which, honestly, was more than I expected. I should have known better than to let myself feel that safe. It happened on a Thursday. I was called into an emergency board meeting with less than 10 minutes' notice, no explanation given. I remember the walk to that conference room feeling longer than it had any right to be, like some part of me already knew. The room was full when I walked in. Every board member. Grayson at the head of the table, jaw tight, a look on his face I'd never seen before, and on the screen behind him, projected for everyone to see, was an email, dated, time-stamped, apparently sent from my account, implying I'd been sleeping with the CEO in exchange for the campaign lead and my recent promotion. It was fabricated, every word of it, but it was detailed, convincing, and it had my name on it. "This is not real," I said, my voice shaking with a fury I hadn't felt since I was 17 years old outside a prom. "I never wrote this." "The metadata says otherwise," said one board member coldly. I looked at Grayson. I needed him to say something, anything, to stand up the way he had for me in that client meeting 3 weeks earlier. He hesitated. It wasn't long, 3 seconds, maybe 4, but I felt every single one of them like a blade, because in that pause I was 17 again, standing outside a prom in a pale blue dress, watching someone I loved choose silence over me. "Everly, I need to look into this properly before he started. I didn't hear the rest. "Don't," I said, standing so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "I know exactly how this story ends. I lived it once already." I walked out of that boardroom, packed the contents of my desk into a single box, while Camille stood there with tears in her eyes, and I did not look back. I turned off my phone that night. I didn't answer his calls, his texts, the 17 voicemails he apparently left over the following 3 days. I told myself I would never again let Grayson Calloway be the reason I doubted my own worth. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until days later, was that the moment I walked out of that boardroom, Grayson didn't go back to his office and let it go. He tore the entire company apart looking for the truth. It was Theo, Grayson's oldest friend and the company's COO, who eventually showed up at my apartment 3 days later, looking like he hadn't slept either. "He's going to hate me for telling you this before he gets the chance," Theo said, "but he needs you to know." He pulled the server logs himself. The email was sent from an internal admin account with back-end access, the kind almost nobody in the building has, except Brianna. I stood in my doorway, arms crossed, refusing to let myself hope. Why would she? Because she's been in love with the idea of him since they were kids, and she finally saw exactly what she was about to lose, Theo said. It wasn't just this. He pulled records going back further. Everly, Brianna was behind the prom rumor too. 10 years ago. She's the one who threatened his mother's insurance. Grayson didn't even know the full extent of it until this week. He's been chasing the truth for 3 days straight. He hasn't gone home. I sat down slowly on my own front step, the weight of a decade rearranging itself in my chest. He confronted her this morning, Theo said quietly. In front of the board. She admitted everything. She's out of the company as of an hour ago. The following Monday, an all-staff email went out, calling everyone to the main atrium at noon. I almost didn't go. Camille physically dragged me. Grayson stood at the front of the room, and for the first time since I'd met him as a scholarship kid in 11th grade lit class, he looked genuinely afraid, not of the board, not of the company, but of me, standing in the back with my arms crossed. 10 years ago, he said, his voice carrying across the silent atrium, I let someone convince me that protecting the people I loved meant sacrificing the truth. I was wrong then, and I let that same mistake almost cost me the most important person in my life, a second time 3 days ago, when I hesitated instead of standing up for her immediately. That won't happen again. He looked directly at me. Everly Bennett did not fabricate that email. She built this campaign, this quarter's biggest account, and half of what's good about this company, entirely on her own talent. I owe her a public correction, a public apology, and, if she's willing to hear it, a private one too. 300 people turned to look at me. I have never, in my entire life, wanted to disappear into the floor more than I did in that moment. But I also, for the first time in 10 years, didn't feel like the girl standing alone outside a prom. I felt chosen. He found me an hour later on the same balcony from the gala, empty now in the middle of a Monday afternoon. You didn't have to do that in front of the entire company, I said. Yes, I did, he said. 10 years too late, but I did. You hesitated, I said quietly. In that boardroom. 3 seconds. I know, he said, and he didn't try to excuse it. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to feel that hesitation from me again. I'm not 17 anymore, Everly. I'm not scared anymore. I have nothing left to protect by staying quiet, and everything to lose by letting you walk away twice. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. The same letter, the one Camille had found, now carefully preserved in a small frame. I want you to have this, he said, not as an apology, as a promise. Every word in there was true 10 years ago. It's still true now. I never stopped. I took the frame with hands that weren't quite steady. I'm still angry, I admitted. I think I get to be angry for a while. Take all the time you need, he said. I'm not going anywhere. I looked at him, really looked, the way I had that very first day in the boardroom, except this time there was no wall between us, nothing left unsaid. Okay, I whispered, then don't. I closed the distance myself this time, and when he kissed me, it didn't feel like closure on an old wound. It felt like the beginning we should have gotten a decade ago, finally arriving exactly when it was supposed to. 6 months later, I run my own division at Callaway Dynamics, a promotion I earned entirely on my own, long after the dust from Brianna's scandal had settled and the truth had done all the talking it needed to do. Camille and Theo, against absolutely everyone's expectations including their own, have been quietly dating since the week Brianna was fired. I have never let either of them forget how much I predicted that. And on my desk, next to my monitor, sits a small framed letter, a little yellowed at the edges, folded and unfolded so many times over the years that the creases have gone soft. Every word of it turned out to be true. They say your first heartbreak teaches you who you are. Mine taught me that sometimes, the boy who breaks your heart is the same one who spends the rest of his life trying to put it back together, if you're brave enough to let him try. If you want to know what happens when Brianna Sinclair resurfaces, because trust me, women like her never really disappear, let me know in the comments. Part 2 might just answer that question. And if this story kept you watching until the very end, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.